It is really my pleasure to introduce my friend, Deborah Davis. Were you already starting to give your talk? No. She, you can understand, Deborah is extremely enthusiastic and very passionate about what she does. Deborah has her BS in physiological psychology and MA in sociology from the University of Pittsburgh. And her PhD is in science studies at the University of Chicago and a Danforth Foundation graduate fellow. And then she has her MPH in epidemiology from the Johns Hopkins University School of Public Health, before it was the Bloomberg Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. She has authored more than 190 publications in books and journals ranging from the Lancet and Journal of the American Medical Association to Scientific American and the New York Times. And she blogs in Freakonomics for the Freakonomics, Huffington Post, and elsewhere. Deborah has been a National Book Award finalist for When Smoke Ran Like Water, which is a very powerful book, and I really recommend it if you have not looked at it. She founded the Environmental Health Trust in 2007 and continues to lead it. She lectures at Georgetown, Harvard, the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, as well as other places, and was founding director of the Center for Environmental Oncology at the University of Pittsburgh Cancer Center and professor of epidemiology at their Graduate School of Public Health. One of her very powerful books, which is a little more recent than the When Smoke Ran Like Water, is The Secret History of the War on Cancer. And it was a top pick by Newsweek is forming the basis for national cancer policy revisions in South Africa, for example. And I've read that book relatively recently. If you ever believed in conspiracy, it's true. At least as far as, for example, the why it took over 50 years for the fact that smoking caused cancer to be accepted in public health circles. So Deborah's career has spanned all areas of academia, public policy, and scientific research. Deborah was a founding member of the Board on Toxicology of the National Academy, which ongoing and provides some evaluations and guidance to us as well as other parts of the government. President Clinton appointed her to the newly established Chemical Safety and Hazard Investigation Branch. She's a former senior advisor to the Assistant Secretary of Health, and she has counseled leading officials in the U.S., the United Nations, European Environment Agency, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And in fact, I first knew Deborah when she was a member of the Board of Scientific Counselors of the National Toxicology Program back in the 80s. She was another, I would say, protege of David Rawls. So with no further ado, I'd like to hear all about cell phone exposure, toxicology, and epidemiology. An update. Deborah.
And it's really an honor to be here today, and I'm especially pleased and proud to be here with Linda Birnbaum as your director. I've been a fan of Dr. Birnbaum's for many years, and it's wonderful to see what she's been able to do in difficult times. And I want to say again to all of you, you are on the cutting edge of what needs to be done now to protect public health. And the reason why your work is so critically important is that the models and analysis that you do will allow us to figure out how to prevent harm and not just prove that harm has happened. So I want to tell you how I came to be concerned about this issue, and I want to explain, as I said informally a few moments ago, like most of you in this room, when I first heard there could be a problem with cell phones, I just did not believe it. At the time, I had 3 phones, and I was kind of proud of my ability to keep up with all my grad students. Well, I began to look, and I learned that I was mistaken in my assumption that if there were a problem, I would know about it, because after all, I'd worked at some of the most important scientific institutions in the world. This is some of what's going on today, and I think some of you may not be aware of this. But you will see here that there's a very aggressive campaign of marketing cell phones to children. And not just 5-year-olds, as I show you here, but here's a baby iPhone rattle case. You'll notice that the cell phone is directly over the child's gonads, and it's a case for a real iPhone for a real baby. They give them to babies in cribs. And here are some of the apps for babies. Linda, last night I went and looked up some of these. You can actually play white noise to put the phone under the baby's head. You can teach the baby how to find its nose or its ears. And these apps are actually real apps for real phones handed to real babies. Another problem that I thought when I first heard about, I was quite skeptical about, was that people would actually put a cell phone in a bra. Some of you may know people that have done that. Anyone here know someone who puts a phone in their bra from time to time? Yeah, okay. Well, let me show you. These are pretty astonishing images. This is a 39-year-old Chinese-American vegetarian from California, and she had multiple primary tumors right under where her phone was stored. And this is her mammogram. Multiple primary tumors. Now, this is a case report that I'm writing up with her physicians, but this is quite extraordinary. She's not in a risk population for breast tumors at all. Breast tumors normally are not multiple primary, but you and I all know this could simply be a coincidence. However, the pattern of putting cell phones in the bra, putting cell phones in the hijab for Muslim women, and now there's a new device on television you may have seen where you can actually have the phone strapped to your head, called a Gojo. It's a real hands-free unit. Made me concerned about what we know about exposure to the phone. So I'm going to briefly talk to you about that, but I want to also share with you the fact that my dear colleague who wrote the preface to my current book, Disconnect, The Truth About Cell Phone Radiation, died of a glioblastoma multiforme just last year. And he wrote in the preface to my book, "We don't want to believe that our new toys, to which we are so attached and which bring enormous profits, could also cause our demise or that of our children. But science is not about belief. Government's responsibility to their citizens should not be either." The irony of this is incredible. When he and I first met to discuss this in 2007, he tells the story that we were having dinner and he went to answer his phone and held it next to his head, and I apparently yelled at him. Perhaps. I said, "How could you be doing this?" Because you see, he had had a brain tumor at age 31 that was picked up incidental to an MRI. And this was now 16 years later. And he said, "What are you talking about? If there was any problem, I'd know about it." So I asked him two questions. I said, "Did you know that cell phones come with warnings? Here's an example. This is the fine print warnings that comes with your iPhone 4, and in case you can't read that, this is what it says at the bottom. May exceed the FCC exposure guidelines for body-worn operation if positioned less than 15 millimeters, 5/8 of an inch from the body, e.g., when carrying the iPhone in your pocket." How many of you here have iPhones? How many of you know that you're not supposed to put it in your pocket? This is a problem. Why are the fine print warnings? I asked him if he knew about that, and then I asked him a second question. I said, "Did you know that you cannot get insurance for health damages from cell phones if you're a cell phone manufacturer? You cannot get secondary insurance." So those two questions are important questions, and I don't have the answers, but I want to show you now some of the science of what we understand. We know without any question that microwave radiation from cell phones has positive impacts. It's being used in medicine now and was approved by the FDA last month to treat brain tumors and hepatocellular carcinoma. Last month for brain tumors, last year for liver cancer. Cell phone-like radiation. It stops bleeding. It is being used to enhance the uptake of drugs into the brain because it is known to relax the blood-brain barrier. Now, I note that another talk going on in the Institute right now has to do with LOX-COX pathways and epilepsy and the blood-brain barrier. Think about all the epileptics we have in this country and the fact that cell phone radiation could be playing a role in weakening the blood-brain barrier. Now, negative impacts of cell phone radiation are less widely understood and appreciated, and I'm going to briefly cover some of the data today because there is so much of it. And I want to say that I am working with some of the best and brightest experts around the world today, some of whose data I will be showing you. People like Igor Belyaev from the National Cancer Institute of Slovakia, formerly with the Karolinska Institute and the Soviet Academy of Sciences. People like Alvaro de Sales of the University of Porto Alegre in Brazil. People like Om Gandhi of the University of Utah. People like Lucas Margaritis and Adamantia Fragopoulou, the University of Athens. We are working together on various aspects with the support from Environmental Health Trust to develop more information about both the positive and the negative uses of cell phone radiation. And today I'm going to go through just some of the highlights. The exposure data I'm going to show you come from work developed by an industry institute funded in Switzerland.